longer out of me. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am so delighted to be back here at CSL Boulder Valley. I was here once before, and I know that Boulder Valley is a work of art because of you, because of each one of you here. And so it is such an honor to be able to speak with you today. This month's theme for all of April is Spiritual Living Through Transformation and Evolution. Whew. That is a big topic. So I'm going to narrow it today to In the Playhouse of the Absolute, because I love to play. Douglas Adams once said, "The knack of flying is learning how to throw yourself at the ground and miss." And miss. Throw yourself at the ground and miss. Now that's what I call playing. My favorite thing to do is play. How many of you like to play? Oh, good. I think all of you like to play. Now, what things do you like to do when you're playing?
Hot springs.
What?
Hot springs.
Oh, hot springs. That's good. What else?
Skiing.
Skiing?
Riding horses.
Riding horses. Oh, that'll fit right in with today's talk. Beautiful.
Playing with animals.
Playing with animals. We all play differently, don't we? We all play differently. But you know what I think? I think some of you weren't totally truthful about what you do when you like to play. But that's okay, because playing in secret is as much fun as playing out loud. And so we're going to see about that. Play is a spiritual practice. When we play, we most fully express the God within. The Absolute is playful. And so how do we at Life Playhouse define play? Play is a state of consciousness. It is profoundly delightful, and it temporarily transports us out of time and space. Play is free and easy. There are no rules, no mistakes, and most of all, no evaluations. No evaluations. When we play, we awaken to our innermost longings and talents. So when I said I like to play, I didn't tell the whole truth either. What's most fun for me is intentional play. Now what does that mean? It means I set an intention and then I play with it. Ernest Holmes, in his sweet little book, 4-page book if you can believe it, called, oh, it just escaped me, but I have it back here. It's called An Experiment with Faith. He says that play is experimenting in the lab of life. And I truly do believe that. Now, do you believe that you can sleep with your head on a book and wake up knowing everything inside the book? Okay. How many of you believe that? Honestly believe that? Show of hands. Okay, how many of you don't believe that and think it's hogwash? Okay, that's what I thought. Well, so, how do we find out? How do we find out if that's true? We experiment. So, when I was in ministerial school, I decided to test my faith in this idea. And I remembered that Science of Mind teaches there's only one mind. And all knowledge is in that mind, right? We're in that mind. Our mind is part of that mind. Only one mind. So I said to myself, I wonder if I can gain knowledge needed for a class without listening to the lectures, reading the books, or doing anything, looking at the videos. So one day, in fact, it was 3 months before my quantum physics class, which I knew a whole lot about, let me tell you. I sat down at my desk.
You sat with a DVD of the string theory under your head and
No, I didn't do it that way, but there's a
Okay.
lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. What I did was, I sat down and I got quiet, I closed my eyes, and I set the intention to write my midterm paper, is what I did, through stream of consciousness writing. And so I sat there in the silence, and I was at my computer, and so all of a sudden I began to type. And some things came fast, and then I'd have to stop for a little bit, and some things came slow. But after an hour, there was a paper written. And so I read it. There were words that I didn't understand. There were concepts that I didn't understand. And I thought, well, this was an experiment. And I saved it on the computer, and then in the busyness of life, I completely forgot about it. So that was my little test. Well, 4 months later, after my quantum physics class started, we were assigned the midterm paper. Well, I reviewed and I reviewed and I wrote and I rewrote and I edited. And finally, after about a whole week went by, I turned it in. And then I remembered my experimental paper, wouldn't you know? So I thought, okay, and I pulled it up and I took a look at it. And lo and behold, well, not word for word, that experimental paper had every concept, every idea in the same order as the paper that I had just sweated over for a whole week after listening to 5 lectures, reading 2 books this big, and watching 3 videos. Well, if I'd had a better memory, I could have saved myself a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Why did I forget about that paper? I'll tell you why I think I did, because I was actually shocked. I sat there dumbfounded looking at that paper. How could I have known the details for a midterm paper to be written in the future 4 months before? How could I have? And how could I have explained comments that were completely foreign to me at the time? And Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Richard Bach says, don't believe what your eyes are telling you. All they show is limitation. Look with your understanding. Find out what you already know, and you will see the way to fly. You will see the way to fly. By experimenting with that single principle, that all knowledge is already available to us, I proved to myself that I had faith, that if I'd had faith in that first paper, it would have been easy. It was a fun experiment, but it was also really powerful in my life. And the reason it was powerful in my life is it turned my faith into conviction. I do believe that I could put my head on a book and all the knowledge. I do believe that. And so whether I connect to mind by laying my head on a book, or by asking, or by sitting in silence like I did the first time, it really doesn't matter how we connect. What matters is that we connect, and whatever method we choose works for us. Works for us. So who knows? Maybe mind gave me the winning Powerball numbers last night. We'll find out when I get home. So to play in God's Playhouse, we need to know the answers to 3 questions. The first one is, what toys are there in the Playhouse? What toys are there to play with? Where do we play? And how does play support us? So taking the first question first, because I'm a linear thinker, what toys are available to us in the Playhouse? First, limitless possibility. Limitless. Every thought that is possible or impossible to think. Every choice that is plausible or implausible. Every outcome that can be imagined, and even those that cannot be imagined, are in the Playhouse of the Absolute. You see, the Playhouse of the Absolute is in the mind of God and in our minds. In our minds. So the second thing in the Playhouse are free choices. All of life is comprised of choices and outcomes. They're consequences. All of life. Think about that in your own life. Think about that. Every experience or event that we have is a consequence of a choice we made at some point. There's always a choice. Yet how many of us hear others say, I know we would never say this, but how many of us hear others say, that I just didn't have a choice. I had to do that because I didn't have a choice. And you're sitting there listening to them thinking, well, gee, I could have done that, or I could have done that, or I could have done that. But sometimes people believe they really don't have a choice. So I'm going to tell you a funny story about pretending to choose. Last week on our way to the gym, my two friends, Katie and Connie, were talking about the weather. And Connie was whining because Channel 9's prediction was for 6 to 10 inches of snow. And she said, it would be nice to get the moisture, but I don't want all that snow because it's going to break off the branches and ruin the flowers and the trees. Katie instantly responded and she says, I have an app for that. So she whips out her phone and she starts going like that. And she says, here, let me place your order. Tell me again what you want. Connie says, by then I had a big grin on my face listening to this. Connie says, well, I want rain and no more than 1 to 3 inches of snow. So Katie does her phone again and she says, all done. And then we all started laughing as we walked into the gym. Well, it rained all night and into the next morning. Connie leaped out of bed and looked out the window. A dusting of snow, that's all we got, a dusting of snow. She says, oh my gosh, that app really works. I gotta text Katie. So she texted Katie and she says, Channel 9 News is gonna be contacting you about your app. Since their forecast was so far off base, they want to use your app to predict the weather in the future. But I don't want you to give it to them until you first program in my preferences. And Katie responded, ha ha ha, I just got off the phone with Kathy Sabin, the meteorologist. She reviewed the process of coordinating her weather technology with my weather station app, and from now on, the weather will be perfect. When Connie saw the reply on her phone, she laughed out loud. It was so much fun. And do you know what? It would have been fun even if we'd gotten 6 to 10 inches of snow, wouldn't it? Because they were pretending. Pretending. Do we remember what it's like to pretend? I think we all did it, if we don't now, when we were kids. Pretending is making things up, and it's a lot better than whining. A lot better than whining. Now, I know none of us have ever whined about the weather. I've never whined about the weather. But you know, some people do. And we humans tend to whine about things that don't go our way, don't we? We tend to whine about things that don't work. And all that whining does nothing to resolve our circumstances. Nothing. In fact, it makes us feel grumpy. Seems like there's a cause and an effect here. We're whining and we feel grumpy. Whining saps our energy and it causes grumpiness. Whining is a choice. A choice. So what if, like Connie and Katie, we made the choice to pretend that our circumstances would always turn out fine, no matter how they looked, because we have an app for it. We all have an app for it. And so we can imagine events turning out to our liking. And since there's a cause and effect relationship, when we think they're going to turn out to our liking, they just will, no matter how they look, because we've set our mind to liking whatever the consequence is going to be. When we talk about the weather, we feel we have no choice. The weather comes from God. There's nothing we can do about the weather, right? So we think we have no choice. But is it true that we have no choice? Is that really true? We always have a choice, even if it's make-believe. You see, they pretended about the weather, and if it had snowed, it would have been just as much fun. And the snow would have been more acceptable because they played with it, and their app didn't work. You know, I had a technical difficulty. So Katie's imaginary app is a metaphor for transforming both our choices and our outcomes into inspired outcomes. Because if we want inspired outcomes, inspired experiences and events in our lives, inspired relationships, we have to make inspired choices. Today, what is an inspired choice? I'm going to talk about that first. Inspired choices are life experiences or events that outpicture as the result of inspired, intentional choice. Inspired outcome comes from an inspired, intentional choice. So when we allow inner wisdom to guide our choices, our lives are filled with the divine. Synchronicities occur. Underlying sense of joy is there no matter what the experience looks like, even if it seems negative or traumatic. Today is Palm Sunday in the Christian religion. And so I'm going to ask you, do you think Jesus made an inspired choice when he rode into Jerusalem knowing that he was going to be killed?
Yes.
You do think so. Does anybody think he didn't make an inspired choice? Well, I don't have to say anymore. I think you guys are already where we need to be. When he rode that donkey into Jerusalem, he was saying yes to God. Because if you remember, he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane before going into Jerusalem, and he asked for the cup to be taken from him. And yet after praying, he still made the choice to go. And since God always says yes, I think we can assume that God said, go. Now, why would God send him into that danger? Why would he still choose to move into Jerusalem when he knew that his death was imminent? Some might say, that was really stupid. I wouldn't do something like that. How can that be an inspired choice? Well, it was inspired because it was the choice of the divine. It was because he listened to his inner wisdom. And even though it didn't seem to be the rational thing to do, he knew that's what he had been guided to do. So I want you to consider this. If Jesus, instead of going to Jerusalem, had spent the next 20 years teaching in Judea and teaching in Galilee on the mountaintops, and then passed away quietly in his bed, do you think we would have ever heard his name today? I don't think so. I think it's not likely. The reason he made an impact on the world is because he moved through the experience of letting go of his personhood into an expanded state of consciousness, and it was visible to all of his followers. He trusted his divine guidance, he made an inspired choice, and he inspired the rest of the world for more than 2,000 years. That one choice. One choice. All we need to make for our lives to count for something forever is one inspired choice. So what have we covered so far? We've proved that playing in principle strengthens our faith. We know that play is a state of consciousness. We know that it's delightful and it takes place outside of time and space. We know that toys are in the playhouse for us to play with. Limitless possibilities, free choices, inspiring outcomes. And we know that play manifests our intentions right here on earth. Just as it did for Connie on her weather, and for Jesus when he went and changed the world. So if play is outside of time and space, then where the heck do we do it? Because guess what? We live inside of time and space. Well, in our reading today, our beautiful readings, Deepak Chopra told us that there's an ocean that's outside of time and space. And we play in that ocean. We play, and what's in that ocean? We play in mind. Mind play includes playful activities that tickle the mind, like implementing new ideas, inventing, experimenting, trivia, and chess. All of those are mind play. We play in heart. Heart play includes playful activities that activate feelings, that activate insights and generate belly laughs and tears. Heart play are things like acting or improv or making music or charades or puppeteering. Those are all forms of heart play. We play in body. Body includes activities that stimulate the flow of life through us. The flow of life, dancing, skydiving, horseback riding. Yes, all of those things, painting, sculpting, woodworking, hiking, diving, skiing, all of those things are body play. And we also play in soul play. Soul play includes activities that connect us to the absolute. Absolutely connect us right then and right there. That's meditation, psychic readings, guided imagery, listening to music. That's different from creating it. Listening to music, mindfulness, drawing, writing. All of those things connect us to the absolute. So now we come to the third and final question of our 3 questions. Okay. How does play support us? First, play transforms faith into conviction, just as it did for me. I made one choice to play with the absolute, and now I have more than faith, I have conviction. Have you heard the old adage, I'll believe it when I see it? Well, that's not faith. No, faith is, I'll see it when I believe it. Faith is the power that fuels creation. I'm going to say that again. Faith is the power that fuels creation. So without faith, it's kind of tough to create your life. Kind of tough to do that. It's spiritual conviction, and if it's not used, creative power dies. If we don't use faith, if we don't take a leap once in a while, our creative power dies. So because faith is power, it can be used negatively or positively, can't it? It might be given away, like having faith in a minister, but not in yourself. Faith starts at home. Faith starts at home. To use faith, we must act. You can't just sit around. I acted when I wrote that little paper. You have to act. And you know, playing is a creative act. In fact, stage plays have 3 acts. Yeah, they have a beginning and a middle and an end. That's a good thing. So for us to act consciously, it helps to have a script, which I call an intention. An intention is a script for creative play because it guides our actions. Secondly, play clarifies our intentions. What good are intentions anyway? Aren't they like those New Year's resolutions, here today and gone very next day? We all have good intentions. I've always heard the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yeah, I grew up hearing that. I didn't quite understand it. But I understand it now because unless we play with our intentions, unless we act them out, test their validity for our lives, we can't become clear about our own purpose. They give us clarity of our purpose. We can't envision the road to heaven, which is within, unless we play with the creative principles. We can even fall off our path, and that's not too fun. Third, play creates our experiences. In his new book, Biocentrism, world-renowned physician Dr. Robert Lanza tells us if one could travel at light speed, one would find oneself everywhere in the universe at once. Omnipresence at the speed of light. Omnipresence. Science is so close. Biocentrism is a new scientific model, and it considers consciousness as the source of life. Consciousness is the source of life, not the reverse. In other words, our world is perfect for us, not because of some turn of the roulette wheel of the universe, but because collectively our consciousness created it for us. We created this planet. We created the stars. We created everything that's going on here. And you know what? We can uncreate it too. We can uncreate it. Every life form, not just humans, but every life form, participated in creating because we all have consciousness. The idea that we create our individual and collective realities has been a mystical teaching for 5,000 years. To quote Dr. Roger Teal at Mile High Church, he says, thoughts thicken into things. Thoughts thicken into things. Jesus taught that the kingdom of heaven, the road to heaven, is within. But a scientific model like biocentrism, that supports the idea that creation is a state of mind, well, that's new. And it's very new thought. But it's coming from the science community. So why is playing essential for faith and evolution? In an experiment with faith, Ernest Holmes tells us that playing is acting out, and when we do that, we can do everything Jesus did and more. And I believe that too. I believe that. And we play when we, Ernest Holmes says this now, we play when we try out new things, when we experiment with ourselves to see what that thing inside us can really do. Can it fly? Can it fly? When we equip ourselves to understand meaning for our lives, when we awaken to divine possibilities, when we cultivate the faith of God because we are it, and because with it we can do anything, anything. Omnipresence at the speed of light. God gives us a playhouse, a lab of life. And we get to imagine at the speed of light. Thoughts are that fast. Thoughts are that fast. And we get to play with the omnipresence when we think and when we allow thoughts to come into us and flow. Our playhouse has toys. It has limitless possibilities. It has free choice. It has inspired outcomes. The divine provides vast unlimited programs, playgrounds I mean, in the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul. And Spirit gives us playmates. We haven't talked about playmates. Spirit gives us playmates who show us how intentional play transforms faith into conviction, and that conviction changes the world. Our relationships teach us that if we're awake and listening. Now, some of our relationships are famous. We have relationships with famous people. We're all groupies in some way. Jesus lived by his conviction, and he changed the world. Einstein lived by his conviction in his equations, and he changed our understanding of the physical world. Ralph Waldo Emerson expressed conviction in his essays, and he changed how we think. And Browning in his poems validated the power of love and opened our hearts. These are playmates. But you and you and you and you and you, you're all playmates too. Because we can all do those things when we create and play. When we were kids, many of us pretended we could fly. Did anybody ever pretend they could fly or dream they could fly? Uh-huh.
Still do.
Uh-huh. Me too. Me too. When we use our spiritual authority, which is our choices, and we act out our imaginative ideas, which is play, acting out our imaginative ideas, in the vast playground of life, we manifest our inspired intentions, which are the outcomes for our lives. And you know what happens? We come to know we can actually fly. Let us pray. Right here, right now there is only one presence, one infinite love intelligence. It is the playground of all life. In that one mind, all possibilities and limitless choices exist. The one heart beats as all hearts in the universal rhythm of love. The one body directs the flow of multitudes in the river of life. And one soul connects us all. And I behold the idea of each one of us as so loved in the mind of God that it became each of us. It became us. It gave us its essence, its nature, its substance. And and its expression. And so I declare this day that knowing that about ourselves, we step into the playground of the absolute, our home, and we play with conviction. As experimenters in the lab of life, we test our beliefs. We pretend all choices are ours, and we laugh at the outcomes. I proclaim that we already know how to fly, and in this moment we take off. I am so deeply grateful for the principle of creative play that allows us to transcend space and time. I give thanks for love that leads our way and law that makes our way possible, and so I move this word into law and I plant it deep in the creative soul. And I nurture it with my knowing, my conviction, and my absolute trust in divine omni-action taking place right here, right now, for each and every one of us, supporting us to fly. And so I let go. And I relax into this beautiful, beautiful music, knowing that I can celebrate play. And we affirm this together by saying, and so it is.
Oh, thank you so much.